my channel, the Tetragrammaton channel. Yeah, welcome friends. Hey, today's episode I wanted to sort of talk about something that I noticed happened in my life when I put into practice, when I got rid of the things in my house that were not of God, and a little bit of the background story as to how it developed into this understanding. Okay, so before I met God in my life, and as I was deep in another religion, I totally started to realize that, reality wasn't what I was brought up to believe. And I come from a technical background where none of that was supposed to be real, and I didn't believe it. I was a total atheist. But in my path in the other religion, i.e. in this case Buddhism, after 4 years of meditation, I noticed that things could happen in reality that weren't supposed to be. Like people claim to have seen ghosts and things like that, and I would not have believed it back in the past. But as my quote-unquote third eye opened, and as my ability to super perceive was in tune, I noticed the same, and I had the same experiences, and they weren't like, by now it had become so normal that I realized that strange things were basic. It was just most people aren't able to see them, or maybe they don't know, they're told that it's not real because we live in a reality perception managed box, right? And probably per design. I think the biggest trick that the devil chose to play in that last time before the tribulation, in the mass age of apostasy, was to convince the world that he did not exist and none of that stuff was possible, right? Like that's the result of the modern age. Anyhow, jumping to the point, I used to have a lot of texts and books from sages. I used to have like books from Huang Po, the great Zen teacher, master. I used to have like stuff from the Dalai Lama. I used to have stuff from many Tibetan philosophies, just all kinds of things, right? I used to have books about the Mahakala. I used to have I always pronounce it wrong, the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu texts, all kinds of stuff. And I put a reasonable amount of reverence behind them, knowing the weight that lied behind it and this sort of insight that they had. Because once you start traveling in the realm of craziness in meditation and weird things happen to you, these books and these teachers would be able to describe and abstractly help you process this stuff and sort of understand what was going on. Of course, it's all crazy stuff, right? I mean, we're talking about things like, astral projection and things of that nature, things that obviously the Christian, Jesus said don't practice these things because they're of the fallen, right? But I didn't know that. Obviously I didn't think that at the time. And one of the things that you notice is that a lot of, for example, these texts like if you just randomly like open up to some of the more weird and out of context things that some like lamas would have said, or the references that they make to say ancient books like the Vedas, then as you read them, it's almost like poetry, right? Some kind of weird mystical thing. And suddenly that has a connection to, say, something really weird that's happened, like a weird dream that you had, or a movie that you've seen, or something that's happened in your life. it's sort of like playing with the other dimension's ability to sort of influence your thoughts and your feelings and what happens in your life. And that's sort of how you engage with the path, the religious path, and gain understanding, gain to walk far in that religion. Obviously, now I know that this is actually the work of the fallen and the demons doing their thing, right? And you have like little Buddhist statues of the Buddha or other like deities, the protector deities, like for example the Mahakala. Or you have, I used to have, for example, a Mahakala mask from a temple with the, and all sorts of things. I mean, if you want to know the details about what for example, the Mahakala is, just check it out on Wikipedia. And they do have charge behind them. There's definitely, just like in the Bible it says, there's myriads of fallen spirits behind every false idol, every icon, every false book, right? And then when I converted when I found the Christian path, when God presented himself to me and I made the conversion, it took me some time to the process of sort of purging your own old way and moving into the new can be a little bit jarring at times, right? Like I wasn't able to, I would justify keeping the old books because I was so convinced that it had done so much good for me, the process of becoming a good meditator and things like that, But I would notice that my house would be, in the space I was living in, would be sort of highly polluted with the influence of something less than constructive. I mean, nasty spirits. And you can sense that in once your super perception is really tuned on. And like I said, I spent a lot of time becoming really good at meditating. And it does have a weird effect. And yeah, and for one thing, like you decalcify your pineal, which back in the day everybody's pineals would have been decalcified, so this isn't such a strange thing. But nowadays most people's pineals are calcified, so it's not active to the same degree. We don't have the same neurophysiological response to, say, the pineal's ability to produce dimethyltryptamine, right? And this is going to sound really crazy to most people, but just forget what I'm saying. If you don't know about it, don't even bother Googling. It's not important. But and even if you have it, it's not a good thing, because that entire space that you become aware of is just filled with vile demons. It's like somebody poured the sewage of existence into the spiritual realm that's most closest to us. And once the layer that made you not see those things is opened, you're kind of only aware of like this jarring, polluting noise, which is the other bad spirits. So I don't think it's I think it's not necessary. Anyways, but that's a diversion. I'll probably have to edit this so that it's concise and makes a little bit more sense. But where was I going with this? Yeah, and anyway, so you become aware of all these things. Just again, I wish I'd have some hardcore meditators that could be like, yeah, what he's saying is kind of true. And then, of course, it's also contingent on the fact that these beings will leave you alone, or that they actually start interacting with you. If you're already on the wrong path, I think they leave you alone, right? Because there's no reason for you to feel so attacked. But if you, for example, have all this stuff and you become a Christian, then tell you what, they ain't gonna leave you alone no more, you know? I don't know why. So I started to throw out the old books. I had a bunch of books on Buddhism, right? I had a bunch of I had other types of like media or like picture books, artists. For example, I used to have like art from Alex Gray, or like I'd be like really into like stuff that, for example, like H.G. Giger made, and all kinds of things, you know. Some of it was reasonably erotic or mature or flat out pornographic in nature. At the time I didn't think much of it, and then something like kind of got my attention down that way, and I was like, okay, maybe these things are sort of filthy in the eyes of the heavens. I'm not quite there yet. I have some attachment to these things. I spent a lot of money on them. I mean, some of those art books are like $30 a pop, you know, and they're hard to get. But I thought, I'm going to get rid of them. So I started to grab like a plastic bag, and I put all these books that I had, my little library, you know, and I had a lot of attachment to that stuff, you know. I threw it out. I didn't even donate it. I didn't give it to a library or nothing. I threw it in the garbage. I figured, well, if it's not good for me, why would it be good for anybody else? Threw it in the garbage. And you know what? A certain type of new peace entered my house. It's like feng shui, you know, like Chinese people talk about balance and a vibe. It was like that. I threw out my old little statue of like Buddha and stuff that I used to meditate in front of. I used to give a lot of reverence to the Buddha. Got rid of that too. And there was this really, like this new stillness in the house, really.